Hello there, it's Tom here, and this is chapter 46 of Gunnerkrigg Court, The Realm of the Dead. Now, this was a pretty fun chapter to work on, and it's also the culmination of Mort's arc, although that's going to be focused on in the chapter after this one. So, in this video I won't go too much into the story stuff, since you can just do that by reading it. But this chapter starts off catching up with what the gang is doing, and how they're trying to figure out what to do with Jean. Basically, gathering information, and Parley and Robot are continuing to practice, and they basically resolve to go down there themselves. And we see that Annie's kind of taking this personally, and she's made the decision that she wants to go to help rather than being kind of vague about what she wants to do. And so we go to see Mort in his usual place. And as well as working to a set palette for each of the characters, I also like to keep the environment colors consistent. And this is obviously the same room that we first met Mort in back in Chapter 4. And even though the art style has changed, keeping the colors to a consistent palette really helps keep the style consistent too. And the tone of this chapter is a little tongue-in-cheek, I guess because that's how I always like to deal with the stories that involve Mort. And Mort is essentially, a jokey-looking character, and his dealings with the realm of the dead are kind of the same. And even though he is used to convey serious information and information about the world they live in, I like this slightly light-hearted theme that Mort and the other ghost creatures seem to have. And I'll look at this more in the next chapter, when I deal directly with Mort's story and some of the things that are conveyed in that chapter. But the thematic style of the scenes in this chapter are definitely meant to reflect the kind of cheap, tacky-looking Halloween decorations. And I always kind of enjoy seeing them start to fill the shelves of the grocery stores whenever I need to go shopping, and I always make a point of stopping to look at them all. And colour-wise, purple and green are really great for that sort of tacky Halloween feel. And that was the basis for the colour scheme in this chapter. And a decision I made for this chapter is that I wanted it to be from Kat's point of view, and it becomes obvious a little bit later into it that Kat and Annie are seeing very different things from each other. And I did this because I was trying to convey the feeling of using Halloween decorations, in a sense. Because the idea of using Halloween decorations at all, or set dressing to make something spooky, always relies on a level of suspension of disbelief. But when it comes to Annie and Mort, they are experiencing the intent behind the decorations and the themes inside the realm of the dead, whereas Kat is just seeing them for their literal existence. So while it could be said that Kat is seeing the decorations themselves, Annie and Mort are experiencing the intent behind them. And as an example in this little sequence here, Annie and Mort may well be dealing with an intimidating skeletal guardian of the entrance to the realm of the dead. But Kat, on the other hand, just sees a picture of what is supposed to be an intimidating skeletal figure. In the next chapter, we see more from Annie's point of view, but I made the decision to show the beginning sequence from Kat's point of view because, in a way, readers of this comic or stories that are in this sort of vein might expect to see the interior of a vast labyrinthine horror facility with monsters and magic, but in a way that would be a little bit more mundane, since it would be expected by the audience. So Kat's view of the actual mundane set dressing is a little bit more unexpected, and it made for a visually fun chapter where I could still convey the information I wanted to get across. And I certainly had fun drawing a lot of the set dressing in this chapter, and I think a lot of the readers seemed to get a kick out of it too. And really, in a way, showing it from Kat's point of view, Kat was a way to get past all the stalling that would be involved in, let's say, the usual expectation of a group sneaking around a spooky building, being frightened by monsters and coming across obstacles. With Kat, she's just able to get to the heart of the matter and push the plot along without having to do a lot of faffing around, I guess. And this theme is even illustrated by the guy in this cheap horror costume, as he points out that Kat must be the life of the party, because clearly she's not experiencing everything in the same way as Annie and Mort are, and even pointing things out as the cheap imitations that they seem to be. And just a little word on the technical side of putting these pages together. Here's an example of one of the panels, where I show that in every panel of Annie and Kat and Mort being in the realm of the dead, I overlaid it with a color gradient set to soft light, just to bring the colors more in line with the feel of the chapter. Here's the same panel without the gradient on top, where the characters are kept to a consistent color palette, but then we switch back to the gradient turned on. And not only does it unify the color scheme a little bit, it also helps give the Realm of the Dead a sort of unified lighting and distinct feel, as if it's being subtly lit by gaudy Halloween party lights. Now, the rest of the chapter deals with some information that was needed to bring together the plan that Annie and the gang are putting together to help Jean, and also to set up what happens in the next chapter with Mort, which I'll talk about more in the Chapter 47 video. And at the end here, this bonus page is just a little glimpse of what Mort and Annie were seeing the whole time, and why they were so shocked at how Cat was able to be pushy with the guy in the cheap costume, since this is how he appeared to the others. And just a word on the design, I used the legs from a Mukati centipede, since I personally find them pretty creepy. And I also really wanted to not give this creature a face with which he could convey expression, since I was trying to make him as little like a human as possible, which would be in total contrast to his costume form, since in that form his face was basically the only detail you could see about him. But I did try and make him look a little sad-looking on this page by giving him big drooping horns and pipes that came from his head, almost like a constant flow of tears. And again, this sort of page is the kind of page that I relish working on, and it's fun to just spend a bit of time designing things like this. And so, just before we finish, when I was writing out the notes for this video, I came across a single picture that basically summed up the feeling I was trying to get across with this chapter, and that is this picture here. On the surface level, we see old Grim Reaper chillaxing on a hammock, but all he's doing really is waiting around until he has to come pay you a visit. And so with that in mind, I'll see you next time for Chapter 47. See ya.